Good evening. From our news broadcast, you will learn of the events which occurred today. Here is the chronicle of the day. The Russian parliament today debated a draft law on the budget for this year. The Council of Ministers of Russia approved the program of economic measures for March and April. The Russian government intends to give greater attention to the social sphere. Protection of mothers and children is the theme of an international conference which has ended in Murmansk. Russian Foreign Minister Kozyrev confirms the agreement to hold the Russian-American summit in Vancouver remains in effect. Today in Moscow, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Vladimir Ficar, held negotiations with top Russian officials. Tomorrow, the 9th Special Congress of People's Deputies of the Russian Federation begins, but today the executive and legislative branches continued to clarify their positions. The Russian parliament met today in a joint session. The agenda did not include the issue of the president's message, which was hounded out to the deputies today, the message on constitutionality. They put off until tomorrow the issue of interrelations among the authorities, and the parliament debated and made decisions to create a television and radio broadcasting channel for the Supreme Soviet. However, the $2 million and 400 million rubles required for these goals were not allocated. In the remaining hour, the parliamentarians debated a law on the budget system of the Republic for the current year. Russia may finally begin to live within its budget, but the law contains amendments introduced after February 26th, when the document was adopted on first reading, and the chairman of the Committee on Budget Planning, Taxes and Pricing, Alexander Pochinok, said that the budget may have to be increased by over 1 trillion rubles. Russia and Russians, it seems, will continue to live on credit. Several minutes ago, on Channel 2, an interview was broadcast with the chairman of the Supreme Soviet, Ruslan Khasbulatov. He raised controversial issues in society and politics and the difficulties faced by young Russian democracy. He expressed hope that the Congress of People's Deputies will be a stabilizing factor in the current tense situation. The Speaker of the Russian Parliament favors increasing the role of the government to overcome the economic crisis and expressed willingness to expand its rights in the area of legislation. Ruslan Khasbulatov said that at the upcoming Congress, much will be determined by the position of the President of the Russian Federation, whether he will act within the Constitution. It seems to be that the main task of society is to fight for democracy, and the central support in this battle for democracy is loyalty to the Constitution and the preservation of constitutional principles. It is no coincidence that in the regions today a movement is arising. Committees to support the Constitution and democracy are arising. It's becoming a mass movement. Russian President Boris Yeltsin will speak today on Channel 1 immediately following our program. According to preliminary information, Boris Yeltsin will participate in the Congress of People's Deputies tomorrow. This was reported today by First Vice Premier Vladimir Shumeiko. He said that the Russian president is preparing to speak at the Congress tomorrow. Shumeiko also said that Boris Yeltsin was officially invited to the Congress, but the members of the Council of Ministers have not yet received this formal invitation. Moreover, the First Vice Premier did not exclude the possibility that the government team would be present at the Congress. The Russian Information Agency, quoting well-informed sources, has reported that today there was a meeting between Russian President Boris Yeltsin and Vice President Alexander Rutskoy. According to Interfax information, the meeting was held at the initiative of the Vice President. Journalists have not yet learned the details of the meeting. The situation in the country and the activities at the Congress were the topic of a press conference in Moscow today by the opposition bloc of parliamentary factions called Russian Unity. This bloc unifies about 450 deputies. Vladimir Isakov said that recent events related to the Russian president's address have led to a new increase in tension in the society. From our point of view, in the country there is a covert coup d'etat underway. And there are many indications to believe that this covert coup d'etat, unless constitutional measures are taken in the very nearest future, could move to an active phase. That is, a phase of direct repression directed against the constitutional organs of power, against public organizations, and against specific citizens. Representatives of the Russian Unity Bloc emphasized that they have information that the security service of the president has compiled a list of leaders of the opposition in case they are to be isolated at a certain time during an emergency situation. Our goal is to remove the president from power for his crude violations of the presidential oath, violations of the Constitution and the laws. At the press conference, a statement by the National Salvation Front was distributed to reporters. It contains a call to the deputies, to the media rather, not to manipulate public opinion, but to give objective information on the position of all political movements. Russian business supports the president, and the financial community in nearby foreign countries is concerned at the situation in Russia. This was announced at a press conference today by the Party of Economic Liberty, led by Konstantin Baravoy. This is an organization uniting 78 organizations. The source of power and law is the people, and to try to fight against the people, to deprive the people of their right to have their opinion, this is a crime. Today, the expression, the quintessence of this power is the president, and the impeachment of the president, or trying to get him to resign, this is declaring the resignation of the people. Today, at a meeting with reporters, Vice Premier Sergei Shachrai outlined possible scenarios for development of events at the coming Congress of People's Deputies, which opens tomorrow. It is nonsense, he said, that over the top level of power, the people, another level of power has appeared, the Supreme Soviet and the Congress, which is trying to decide the fate of the people and oust the popularly elected president. This issue should be decided not at a Congress, but by referendum. Is the Russian Federation threatened with collapse due to the recent events? Shachrai answered this way: hardly. For the regions, chaos is worse than the absence of a coordinating center, so the regions have an interest in its existence. A choice is one of the biggest problems in life. Many Russians are making their choices today. In Krasnodar, there was a Congress of the All-Kuban Cossack host. The three-day conflict between the Union of Cossacks of the Don province and the local authorities is over. The Cossacks expressed full support for the president and did not approve the Supreme Soviet. They signed an agreement with the provincial council and administration. They will get tax benefits and credit for Cossack agricultural communes, and they will form organs of Cossack self-government. The documents provide for a message to be sent to the Russian Federation Supreme Soviet in the form of legislative initiative asking that additional powers be given to Rostov province as a member of the Russian Federation. As a response to the text of the agreement, which was read by Taman Kavedin, the Cossacks shouted "no good" and spontaneously called a meeting of a large circle. They decided to introduce Cossack self-government in the province and create a temporary government with a full set of ministers. The leaders of the province, who even before had no illusions on the solidity of this agreement, made a firm statement on local television. At a press conference in Nizhny Novgorod, an address by members of the Russian Federation was announced. The situation in which federal authorities are incapable of resolving the constitutional crisis, the province, city councils, and the administrations of provinces and cities see in the members of the Federation the only force which can stop the conflict among the various sides. Having created a Federation Council, we must declare our responsibility for the fate of Russia through our joint action. The Council of the Federation does not claim any supreme legislative or executive functions, only claims a coordinating role in order to protect the constitutional system and preserve the territorial integrity of the Federation and guarantee the rights of its members. Without the agreement of the Council of the Federation, they say, no order, law, or decision should be adopted. Silence is also a reaction, also a position. With these words, a responsible official close to the Kazakhstan President Nursultan Nazarbayev said in answer to a question on why the leaders of the Republic have not responded to the situation in Russia. Disputes between the various branches of power have arisen in Kazakhstan as well, but they have always been resolved through negotiation, and we think common sense will prevail in Moscow as well. This information was reported by Itartas from Alma-Ata. In Russia, in times of trouble, the voice of the Church has always played an important role. Today, the Patriarch of Moscow and all Russia, Alexei II, made a statement to the citizens of Russia. It was recorded for our program. Dear citizens of Russia, esteemed people's deputies, members of the government, brothers and sisters, in these fateful days, I appeal to all of you with a sincere call to do everything possible to keep the country from falling into chaos and destruction and civil war. We must find compromise. We must give people the opportunity to survive in these difficult days. The Holy Synod, which is comprised of bishops of the Russian Church, has appealed to Russians, to the citizens of our country, calling on them to do the following. With all the force of our pastoral voice, we say to the rulers, stop. If the country falls into the abyss, each of you will answer before God and history. You must abandon your ambitions and rise above yourselves. The people needs powerful authority, which is capable of adopting laws and guaranteeing their implementation. We need rulers who are capable of protecting us from anarchy and arbitrary rule and protecting the country from collapse. We need a state which will not permit a return to the past dictatorship, repression of personal freedom, and the liberty of the people. We need a form of government which will allow us to resolve key issues quickly, which relate to the future life in a renewed Russia. I appeal especially to the army. We welcome your position not to participate in the political conflict. This is the only acceptable position today, and we ask our soldiers to remain wise, not to submit to the influence of political extremists, to preserve the life and dignity of citizens of the country. We must find compromise between the branches of power in order to preserve the country. If compromise is not found, this would be fraught with the most dangerous consequences for Russia. Blood may flow, a civil war may begin. I call on all of you to find compromise. I believe that the President has proposed that the people express their confidence in him for a second time, or their lack of confidence, through a vote. And this is the only way, the election of a new parliament and the election of a president. This is the way of compromise which will make it possible to bring our country out of the crisis it is in today. Today's session may be the most difficult in the entire history of the current cabinet. Of the 6 issues on the agenda, only 2 were discussed at length, but both are vital for the country: on the economic policy of the government in March and April of this year, and on measures to stabilize the agro-industrial production. The first issue included a package of urgent measures for the current political instability. The reporter was Vice Premier Boris Fyodorov. He emphasized that the urgency of the moment requires additional measures, but does not mean a change in the course of reform. In the document adopted, it is emphasized that there is a need to ensure the savings of the population, to increase interest rates at banks, and raise the minimum wage to 4,500 rubles per month, to support families with many children. The government also intends to give very serious attention to credit and monetary policy, including the cessation of credits and cash transfers to CIS countries without intergovernmental agreements, and also the issue of rapid and simplified procedures to give land to citizens. It must be said that the debate was held in harsh tones. It was said that ministers are managing their own sectors but poorly understand the overall financial picture of the government. They are acting more like sector managers than politicians. So far, the tax system is working poorly, and many decisions of the State Property Committee are made unilaterally without being reported to the cabinet. At the session, criticism was made of employees in the government apparatus as well. The Russian Federal Employment Service has prepared predictions for the employment market this year. 15.5 million people will join the ranks of those seeking jobs. This is not counting discharged military personnel and women returning from maternity leave. This represents the supply of labor power for this year. And what about the demand? Today's job fair is the first sign of hope for many who are in that unaccustomed for us situation of unemployment. Those who are just facing this threat have also come here. They are mostly engineering and technical personnel and members of the creative intelligentsia. 80% of them are women. Most of them worked in military enterprises before or in the many organizations and offices. 150 enterprises in the city and rural areas are ready to offer them jobs. However, many of them will have to change their previous professions fully or partly. In order to choose the best future, you can use the help of psychiatrists, experienced consultants, and undergo testing. Those who desire can enroll in retraining courses. There is also a seasonal job fair and fair for jobs that can be done at home. As they say, the first pancake doesn't always turn out well. The average lifespan in Russia is 52 years. In the West, it's 75 years. But there are some more alarming data. In the first grade of high school, only 10% of our children are in very good health. It is said that children are born out of love, but the state's love toward children is just as important. Protecting mothers and children was the topic of a conference held in Murmansk. Beyond the Arctic Circle, people are still waiting for spring. The harsh climate, together with the irrational economic system, are additional risk factors for the health of people in this area. Children are the most vulnerable. The local administration understands this and are investing in health care. This exhibition shows equipment for maternity hospitals and children's hospitals from leading companies in America, Japan, Switzerland, etc. But will it ever appear in the healthcare facilities of the province? If we want to think about the future of the nation, we must think about the gene pool, our mothers and children. It is good that we are moving away from words to more specific actions now. If the doctors will help us, I think we can find both the funds and attract the necessary sponsors. The exhibit and seminar were organized by Service Instruments. They are providing the money along with the Institute of Doctors Training. Specialists and professors are showing their colleagues the new techniques and equipment. It's one of a series of regional programs whose goal is to attract the attention of the medical community and also the administrations of republics, provinces, and regions to the problems of protecting mothers and children. In financial news, the increase in the rate of the dollar has stopped. At Moscow's interbank exchange, trading resulted in a level of 684 rubles to the dollar, which was the same as at previous trading. The Bank of Latvia has announced it will stop buying rubles, and the Belarusian press reports today that the first samples of national currency are being printed there. The Belarusian currency is called the ruble and is being printed in Germany. The Russian ruble is still in short supply in Belarusian industry. The negative balance last month alone was 12 billion rubles. In the future, interest in Russian cash will increase further. This was shown at the first trading at the currency exchange, which was created for buying and selling so-called soft currencies, the karbovans, the crowns, and Lithuanian coupons. Russian cash was sold for the Belarusian ruble at a rate of 33 kopecks. According to a decree by the Council of Ministers and the National Bank, all currencies will now be sold at this new exchange, and by April 10th, the sub-accounts in enterprises which are in Russian rubles must be closed. The National Bank in Belarus will be the only owner of Russian rubles. Introducing a new payment mechanism, however, the government of Belarus is not rejecting the idea of a single economic union with Russia. Today, Russia has only 2 seaports left, at Murmansk and Novorossiysk. It is obvious that the river fleet will bear a greater burden, and this is the beginning of the season. This lonely figure on the deck of this passenger ship in the Slovakian city of Komárno is known by everyone. It's the Russian Captain Boris Zolotnitsyn. But he cannot give the order to weigh anchor. The captain is sort of an economic prisoner at the Slovakian wharf. For the last 4 decades, in CMEA programs, over 500 passenger and cargo ships for Russia's rivers have been built here. Some of them came back here for renovation, as did the ship of this captain, called the 21st Congress of the Communist Party, docked here 4 years ago. Since that time, the Communist Party ceased to exist, as did its flag and the name. The ship lost both of these, and the name of its home port even changed. It used to be Gorky, now has its original name back. It used to be that repairs would be made, and then 2/3 of that value would be paid in rubles. Now, dollar payment systems have been introduced, and we do not have that much hard currency, nor does our Czechoslovakian partner. Then that country as well ceased to exist. So Zolotnitsyn is in Slovakia expecting Russia to find $2 million so he can raise the tricolor flag and go back home. The situation affects not only this boat, but an entire flotilla of the Sea River class of boats, which are so necessary for us now. The famous shipbuilding plant here has been cooperating with us for a half-century, but is facing difficulties because of the sharp break in normal economic relations. Restoring economic ties among the former socialist countries is more difficult than simply renaming the Academy of Social Sciences of the Communist Party to the new Russian Academy of Management. The annual meeting of the founders of the Association of East European Cooperation and Trade is underway here. We would love to buy the goods from the former socialist countries, and they would love to sell them to us, but we have no hard currency. This problem of payments is the problem of yesterday. These issues are being resolved in the form of mutual clearing, etc. Earlier, cooperation was organized by the CMEA, and a control mechanism existed. Enterprises now are making deals blindly, having no information about the reputation of their partners. Specialists believe a civilized market can emerge without the help of the government, and this association is directing all of its investment to creating computer networks. Today they can provide information rapidly to thousands of customers. The so-called intergovernmental agreements, these are all documents of the past. And today, the only thing remaining on the surface is the real interest of entrepreneurial initiative, but we need structures to replace the structures of the CMEA command system. This is the task of this association. Today in Moscow, the mayor of the city, Yuri Lushkov, held a press conference. The mayor has been receiving many requests for permits for meetings in these difficult days. He's been forced to announce measures to ensure the order and safety of our citizens. In this period, we will guarantee legality and order, as well as the opportunity to exercise all constitutional rights. The main task of the government is to prevent conflict between polarized groups holding meetings on the streets. The largest meetings will be held March 28th for the president's opponents on Arbat Square to the White House, and for his supporters from Mayakovsky Square to Vasily's Gate at the Kremlin. We will provide places for meetings for Labor Moscow, Label Russia, the National Salvation Front, etc. They will have the opportunity to express their views on the main arteries of the city, but we will not allow the picketing of the Ostankino television building, and unauthorized demonstrations will be prevented by the authorities. Today in Plisetsk, a space complex was launched. It's a star rocket created on the basis of the ballistic missile RS-12M. The control of the flight will be done by the Mission Control Center. At the Zapadnaya mine, an accident occurred on Tuesday night. This happened after a train derailed as miners were returning to the surface. 1 miner was killed and 4 were wounded. And now the other news of the day. For the 50th anniversary of the Kursk battle, residents of Belgorod and that province are preparing a celebration. Today in Volgograd, there was an international meeting of veterans of World War II. It is believed that this will be the first stage in the creation of a world veterans movement to fight for peace, friendship, and brotherhood. However, the political situation in our country forced several participants in the Volgograd conference to cancel their trips to Russia. Nevertheless, representatives of almost 20 countries gathered here to develop a program for further action. The International Veterans Association appealed to the peoples, parliaments, and governments of the world with a proposal at the 50th anniversary of the end of the worst war of the century. They want to hold a World Veterans Conference in Belgrade to sign a charter of peace for the 21st century. At this Congress, the presidents and heads of government of all countries would be invited, and an appeal would be made to the UN Secretary General to declare September 1st, 1995 as Day of Honor and Forgiveness for all soldiers who fought in the 20th century. Today, Boris Yeltsin met in Moscow with Vladimir Mechir, the Prime Minister of the Slovak Republic, who wants to become a bridge between Western and Eastern Europe. However, he is facing serious economic problems due to the break in traditional economic ties, including the ties with Russia. This situation is unacceptable to both sides, and as today's negotiations between the heads of state showed, Moscow and Bratislava intend to create new mechanisms for goods exchange to find a way out of the dead end caused by the transfer of former CMEA partners to dollar payments systems. The sides believe this can be promoted by Russian-Slovakian agreements on economic and scientific technical cooperation. At a meeting with reporters today, Vladimir Mechir said that Russia and Slovakia, which became independent only 84 days ago, are unified by a rich tradition of 1.5 centuries of cooperation, which today is entering a qualitatively new level. Our next report summarizes the results of the visit by Foreign Minister Andrei Kozyrev to Washington. On the final day of his visit, Andrei Kozyrev met in the White House with U.S. President Bill Clinton. The Russian minister told the president about the political situation in our country. Bill Clinton noted that the United States is interested in Russia's continued movement toward democracy and market reform in order to reduce the nuclear threat. This will allow America to save billions of dollars by reducing expenditures on the nuclear arsenal. Support for Russia is a good investment for America, Bill Clinton said, and he noted that he is anxiously awaiting his meeting in Vancouver with President Yeltsin. Did you discuss the plan for economic assistance with the president? In the United States, the idea of help is unpopular, and in Russia it is also unpopular. We are talking more about cooperation, which will be mutually beneficial. These are two great powers which have all the necessary conditions, and the leaders who are prepared to move from words to actions. And this is the main conclusion of my meeting with the president. After this, there was a final round of negotiations between Andrei Kozyrev and U.S. Secretary of State Warren Christopher. Summarizing the results, the foreign minister noted that he had prepared the productive basis for the Russian-American summit. The American side was happy to hear that Yeltsin is committed to protecting civil rights in Russia. This was announced by Kozyrev. The United States supports the policy of reform of the Yeltsin government. At a session of the All-China Assembly of Popular Representatives in Peking, important events occurred. The parliament adopted amendments to the country's constitution. They relate to the model of society which the 1 billion people here are following. China is building socialism with a Chinese specification. The Constitution now says. The second point are amendments related to the economy. From now on, the Constitution will not mention the concept of the state sector. Instead, it will talk about the economy of state property. The earlier language was vague and posed an obstacle to expanding reforms at state enterprises. The new language will give state enterprises the right to use state property and choose their own form of management. This should open a wide path to privatization of state enterprises. There were also serious structural changes in the government apparatus. Such Concepts as the sad idea of the popular commune and family contracts and etc. are being replaced by such terms as socialist market economy. There were few amendments, however. The deputies did not want to make fundamental changes in the Constitution. They intend only to legally enshrine the movement toward a market. As the new preamble says, they are beginning the stage of building socialism. The third round of negotiations on peace in Bosnia-Herzegovina ended in New York without results. The leader of the Bosnian Serbs, Radovan Karadzic, accused the Muslim delegation of refusing to participate in direct negotiations and said that the Vance-Owen map would damage the Serbian population. The delegation of the Serbian Republic is leaving the United States today. Vance and Owen are continuing negotiations with the Muslim leader Izetbegovic. They hope that he will agree to sign the document on the map. Boutros Ghali expressed hope that the conference will continue in London. The Security Council today will probably finish consideration of a resolution on a no-fly zone in Bosnia-Herzegovina. In eastern Bosnia, an air bridge between Tuzla, Zvornik and Srebrenica is evacuating wounded and refugees on 3 French helicopters from the UN contingent. The 4th helicopter was prohibited from taking off by Serbian authorities. From Tuzla, a bus arrived in Zvornik carrying the first 43 Serbian refugees. All are critically ill. In Angola, fighting continues between government forces and the opposition group UNITA. Fighters of UNITA took up arms in October of last year in violation of the peace agreement signed with the government. They seized many population centers. As a result of intensive fighting, the government has managed to retake some of them, including the city of Koshito. Egypt's security service has transferred to the U.S. FBI Mahmoud Abu Halim. He was arrested, suspected with participation in the explosion at the World Trade Center in New York. The arrested person will face an American court soon. In the winter of 1990 and 1991, the German population collected for Russia through the humanitarian organization Kill Deutschland 140 million marks. Half of that sum was spent at that time on food products. And now the start is about to happen for continuing this act of humanitarian assistance to our country. We're at the warehouse at Köln-Bonn Airport, where our airplanes will soon go to Russia carrying German cargo. 1/2 of the money is left. It will be spent in a different way on medical equipment and equipment for children's cancer centers. Leukemia, or cancer of the blood, has an 80% cure rate in Germany. In our country, this indicator is 10 times less. Soon, however, treatment centers in Voronezh, Volgograd, Omsk, Khabarovsk, and other cities will have treatment capability approaching that of the West. And 1/2 of all leukemia patients in Russia and all of those in Kazakhstan will be able to undergo a course of chemotherapy using German equipment and medicine. The doctors who will use this equipment have already had the necessary training in Germany and Russia. By the end of April, according to the president of the association, Klaus Nullner, the delivery of equipment will be finished, but we do not intend to end our efforts with this action. Near Moscow in Delenov, we will create an orthopedic center for children, and the financial expenses on this will be just as large as those on our cancer program. In a day so full of political events, we nevertheless found some time for cultural news. In Magadan, there was a festival called the Golden Autumn of Singers. It was devoted to the 90th birthday of Vadim Kozin. On the variety stage of the 30s and 40s, Vadim Kozin was a star of the brightest magnitude. In 1943, Churchill celebrated his birthday at the Tehran conference and asked Stalin for only one gift: to invite Vadim Kozin to perform. His legendary talent was left to him by his parents and grandparents, who were gypsy singers, and everyone who hears him remembers his voice. His life has been like a song, a long journey. It began in 1944 and continues still. He has lived a half-century in Magadan, and he has one dream left. He wants to become an honored citizen of the city. The City Council of People's Deputies has decided not to grant the title of honored citizen to Vadim Kozin. In Moscow, at the Krymsky Val, there was an exhibition devoted to the works of the Russian artist Pavel Kovin. Service to God and the fatherland, this was his credo in life. An empty canvas is the first thing at the exhibit. It's a symbol of the tragically unfulfilled artistic vision of Pavel Kovin. There are also his paintings Requiem or Russia Departing. These etudes are expressed on the canvas and gathered together at this exhibit for the first time in such large numbers. The exhibit is devoted to his 100th birthday. We know him most for his work in the Soviet Russian artistic environment of the 30s and 50s, the environment he had to work. But there are other works as well. His triptych devoted to Alexander Nevsky, painted in 1942, which immediately became very well known as an embodiment of the artistic expression of that time, expressing victory and defense of the homeland. His portraits are in the first ranks in our galleries. Portraits of Nesterov, Gomelay, Kolnyokov, Gorky, Zhukov, and others. They show the work of his talent. He also had works devoted to the quiet life. Korin was a morally pure person. He worked on his own. He didn't love loud words. I paint with difficulty, with my soul, he said, and often with the blood of my heart. Viewers immediately sense this. Those are the events which the day, March 25th, brought to us, and we believe that tomorrow will be just as full of important events. That's all for me. Good night. Ultrasonic scanners and flexible fiber endoscopes. The Kraft company sells them for rubles. Telephone in Moscow, 231-7220 and 231-7384. Top-class automobiles. This is a businessman's style. The Volga G31029 from Incom Company. All the parts are reliable and flawless. German furniture in your office. From the Engineer Company. Oil and common sense together. Good evening. Today at Moscow's Laguna Park Hotel, there was the drawing for the Davis Cup match between Russia and Germany. At the Olympic Stadium courts, Andrei Cherkasov and Karl Uwe Stepp will play first, and then Mikhail Stich with Andrei Aikovsky. On Saturday, Cherkasov and Stich will play, and then Stepp and Aikovsky. On Sunday, the final will be played between Cherkasov and Stich and Stepp and Aikovsky. Andrei Chesnakov said that he does not feel well and can only wish his teammates well. A surprise occurred at the tennis tournament in Houston. The 18-year-old Russian player Tatyana Ignatieva in the second round beat the famous American star Jennifer Capriati. Until her victory today, Tatyana Ignatieva was only 330th in the world rankings. As you know, in the first elimination round for the World Championships in soccer, in the European Group number 1 at Palermo, Italy beat Malta 6-1. We're seeing goals being scored by Bargio, Signori, Verhovot, Mancini, who scored 2, and Maldini. Italy leads the group with 8 points. Switzerland has 7, Scotland 4, Portugal 3. Estonia and Malta have 1 point each. Last Wednesday, in the NHL Championships, in the match between Vancouver and Los Angeles, Pavel Bure had a great game. He scored 2 goals against Gretzky's team, adding the 54th and 55th goals to his record for the season. Vancouver won 6-2 and continues to lead in the Smythe division.